Hello, you're listening to Off the Page, a bookish podcast.
We're uni students studying English Lit, and we're here to give you a rundown of all our favourite book-related topics. I'm Daisy.
And I'm Sophie.
Today we're going to be talking about It Ends With Us by Colleen Hoover.
This is a spoiler alert. From this point forward, expect spoilers. And also, just a quick trigger warning, if you haven't already read It Ends With Us, there will be discussions regarding incidents of domestic violence.
Have you ever heard of Colleen Hoover?
I have.
Okay, what do you know about her?
Mostly her controversies. I've read Verity.
What did you think of Verity?
I liked it, but I also kind of really didn't like the romance elements. I was more about the thriller bits of it, so I can't speak to her as a romance
writer. Okay, so she was born on the 11th of December 1979. She wrote It Ends With Us, which obviously is a book that we're going to talk about, when she was 36 years old. She grew up in Stilito, Texas, and in 2004 she got a degree from Texas A&M Commerce in social work. She is best known for her romance novels. Do you have any questions about her as an author?
I did not know she was a social worker, and that provides a bit more insight into.
So there's a lot of background stuff for Colleen Hoover, but specifically for It Ends With Us, the background of the book is it's based on her mum and herself. So her mum was abused and had issues with domestic violence, and then Colleen's parents got divorced when she was a toddler. So she has witnessed domestic violence and things like that. And she's actually gone on record to say that this is the most personal book that she's ever written. She said that she wanted to write something complex about abuse, especially when it's hard to leave. So that's a big focal point, is kind of giving an understanding of why some people stay.
Yeah, I get you.
Yeah.
And obviously being a social worker, you definitely would see a lot of those situations as well.
Yeah. Okay, so a brief overview of the plot of the story. Your main characters are Lily Bloom, who is the protagonist, I suppose. She is the main character. So there's Lily Bloom.
Yep.
There's Atlas Corrigan, Ryle Kincaid, Emerson, Alyssa Kincaid, Marshall, and Lily's mother. Okay? It Ends With Us is the story of Lily, who has a rough childhood and is forced to navigate adulthood quite isolated. On her journey to success, she meets the neurosurgeon Ryle, who turns her life around in more than one way. Ryle has a no dating rule, which intrigues Lily. As Lily and Ryle's lives become further intertwined via a mutual friend Alyssa, who is also Ryle's sister, they settle into a happy relationship, except one incident involving a burned casserole and a badly timed push. One day, at a meal, Lily accidentally reconnects with an ex from her youth, named Atlas, someone she shares a deep connection with and a rich history. Ryle struggles to cope with this. After a time of peace, marriage, and shared assets, Ryle's jealousy stirs up some serious altercations, resulting in Lily having to take a big step away from their relationship. Fleeing to the home of Atlas, Lily vows to break things off with Ryle. When she finds out she's pregnant with a daughter, that decision takes on a whole different meaning. Circling back to the title, It Ends With Us, referring to the cycle of abuse. Okay, so some key moments to talk about from this book. I would say, to start off, Lily's dad. So Lily's parents had a very toxic relationship. Her dad was abusive towards her mum. They had a lot of issues. And the start of the book actually begins with how Lily had been at his funeral. He had passed away.
The dad, yeah.
The dad had passed away, yeah. And she was asked to give a eulogy at his funeral, only she couldn't think of anything nice to say, so she stood there in silence for 2 minutes. Another key moment is how Lily and Ryle met. So, the opening scene of the book, she's on a rooftop, on a random apartment complex. She's gone up to this random roof, she's looking at the stars at the city, she's thinking about death, having just come from her dad's funeral. And Ryle bursts in and he starts beating the shit out of a chair, kicking it and throwing it around, which is going to be important because that is foreshadowing for the future.
Not a good sign.
There's also, at this moment, we find out that the reason that Ryle was so upset, why Ryle was riled, if you will. He's a neurosurgeon, and he'd just come from the hospital where he had lost a child, unfortunately. A child that had been shot by their sibling, which it was an accident. It was very much framed as they'd just found a gun and they didn't understand it, and it wasn't on purpose. But that is why he was so upset. Why Ryle was riled. We also find out later in the book that one of the reasons that Ryle has so many issues is because he himself had a very similar situation when he was a child. So himself and Alyssa, obviously their siblings, they had a brother who unfortunately passed away due to essentially the same situation where a gun was involved. They were children, they didn't understand, and Ryle had shot the gun, and unfortunately the brother ended up passing away.
Ah, okay. That's very, on the nose. Simple.
On the nose, yeah.
Yeah.
Next is that Alyssa and Lily met through Lily's shop. So she opens up a flower shop, and whilst before it's fully set up and before opening day, obviously you buy a shop and then you have to kind of set it up. And while she's in there setting it up, Alyssa comes in and kind of asks/offers to work for Lily. And that starts their friendship. And at some point, Lily falls over a box, I believe, and she hurts her ankle. So Alyssa, being the amazing friend that she is, says, "Oh, well, I'm supposed to go and meet my husband and my brother. My brother's a doctor. They're only around the corner. I'll get him to come and look at it for you." But of course, when they get there, the doctor that is Alyssa's brother is Ryle. So this is how Lily and Ryle kind of reconnect, because from the rooftop scene, Ryle was quite vulgar. He said he wanted to sleep with her but didn't want a relationship. Lily was intrigued, as we've said, but they ultimately go their separate ways. They don't talk. So this actually is about 6 months later. They coincidentally reconnect, and that kind of starts up their romance.
Yeah.
Eventually, the four of them, being Lily, Ryle, Alyssa, and her husband Marshall, they go for a meal at a restaurant called Bibs. And whilst they're at this restaurant, Atlas shows up. And it turns out the restaurant is owned by Atlas. It's his. So there's a little bit of a awkward but pleasant conversation between Atlas and Lily. No, they don't tell anyone that they know each other. They just they have this conversation kind of privately. But that's it really for their first meeting in the future. But then later on, they go back to Bibs, again being Alyssa, Marshall, Ryle and Lily. They go back for a meal at Bibs, and this time is after the first incidents of abuse, and Atlas notices, and he tries to call it out and tries to help Lily essentially, but she refuses, though it does end with him giving her his phone number on a piece of paper that she keeps in the back of her phone. She says in the book as well, she doesn't know why she kept it, she just did.
So she doesn't call him, she doesn't put it in her phone?
She doesn't put it in her phone, she keeps the number on the piece of paper in the back of her phone.
And then just forgets
And then forgets about it. She forgets that it's there. Okay, it's also important to note, Atlas is Lily's childhood love. Obviously we've mentioned that briefly in the synopsis, but he is her childhood love. He is who she lost her virginity to. They had a very strong connection. It was a deep and meaningful relationship that they shared. And through the book, we see that Lily wrote journals when she was younger, addressed to Ellen DeGeneres, of all people. Ellen DeGeneres.
That's wild.
Yeah, so these journals that she's written basically are her talking about her relationship with Atlas and talking about Atlas, how they met, all that good stuff. Bibs, the restaurant, is actually an acronym for Better in Boston, which is basically when they were younger, they would tell each other that life would be better in Boston. When they grow up, they're going to move to Boston. They'll live in Boston together. Because of some things that happened in Atlas's past, he had enjoyed his life more. Sorry, Otis. He had enjoyed his life more when he had previously lived in Boston, because having moved away from Boston, some issues with his family life meant that he was homeless, and obviously Lily's home life wasn't great, so they had this idea that better in Boston.
So like an inside joke?
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
And at some point, Atlas gives Lily a magnet that says better in Boston, and that's important to keep in mind because she keeps this magnet and has this magnet. In present day, Lily still has this magnet. She keeps it on her fridge, like it is something that she has. It's got sentimental value attached to it. And since we're talking about the journals, and she ends up banging her head, the book itself, the way that it's laid out, the chapters flip. Not every single chapter, as in one chapter and then another. Just chunks of the book, I suppose, flip between present day Lily with Ryle and past younger Lily when she was in her teens with Atlas.
Ah, okay.
Yeah, so we kind of get to see both love stories simultaneously, even though they're at different times.
Which is kind of actually really cool.
It is quite cool. Okay, so the first instance of abuse in this book is the burned casserole. So Ryle burns a casserole, he burns his hand trying to take it out, and Lily laughs, she giggles, it's not really a serious moment to her, and Ryle kind of lashes out. He pushes her. The second incident is Ryle basically finds Atlas's phone number in the back of her phone and goes into a bit of a jealous rage. Lily tries to leave and he follows her out onto the stairwell, and it ultimately leads to him pushing her down the stairs. And from this incident, she blacks out at the bottom of the stairs. She wakes up back in the apartment, and Ryle is very apologetic. It's important to note that after every incident, Ryle is extremely apologetic. Very much, I wish I hadn't done that. The final kind of big major incident between the two of them happens because Atlas, his restaurant does really well, so someone comes to interview him for a newspaper article kind of going through Boston's newest and brightest businesses. And in this interview, he discusses the woman from his childhood who made all of it possible. He kind of attributes all of his success to Lily. He also, in this interview, mentions Better in Boston, which obviously is on the magnet that she keeps.
On the fridge.
On the fridge.
In the place that she lives.
She now lives with Ryle.
Yeah.
They are married, and it's on their fridge.
Ah.
So Lily comes home after being, I believe, at her shop. She comes home and Ryle's in a weird mood. It basically, to cut it short, it kind of accumulates to he does attempt to rape her. He also headbutts her. So there's a theme of her having head injuries from these attacks. And one of the important things to note is that one of the things that she has from Atlas is that he used to kiss her in a very specific spot on her collarbone, and when they went their separate ways, she had it tattooed, a little heart where he used to kiss her,
which is adorable.
which is so cute. Basically, Lily comes home and
I can see where this is going.
Yeah. There's an attempted rape, and while he headbutts her, but whilst this is all happening, he reveals that he had read her journals. So he now knows what Better in Boston is from Atlas's interview and from her journals. So I'm pretty sure he throws that magnet at her. And he knows that the heart tattoo on her collar is for Atlas and their relationship. So he bites her and like sinks his teeth into her skin in that spot, which does end up leaving a scar.
I feel like I would like to say that I'm really impressed by the symbolism of that, like the little heart and the idea that the relationships you have in life sort of stay with you. I think that's a really visible, like accessible way of showing that in the bite marks. I really think that's cool.
That is cool. And the last thing to note is that Lily and Ryle do end up getting a divorce. She asks for a divorce at least.
Thank God.
Which is obviously after this last incident. Obviously she ends up calling Atlas to help her. She goes and stays with him for a little while and she finds out she's pregnant, and this kind of leads to her being like, yeah, okay, we can't be together because I don't want my kid to have to be around that sort of behaviour. And one of the key things that Lily says to Ryle once the baby is involved is that Emerson, which is what they call their daughter, will not be having overnights with Ryle. So she says you can see her as much as you want, but you cannot have her overnight until she's able to speak. And Ryle's upset by this. He's like, that's my daughter, I'm allowed to have her if I want to. And it comes to Lily saying she needs to be able to speak so she can tell me if anything happens, if you do anything to her, or if there's any incidents of domestic violence. Essentially, she needs to be able to tell me, because then you won't see her again.
That's really powerful though. I feel like it really implies like a difference. It's an escalation in Ryle's character. Like, you're going through this, and not to say that it's not comparable or mutually awful, but there's a difference between abusing your partner and abusing a baby,
child,
a newborn,
a baby,
something different. Like, there is a difference. So it sort of, I feel like that reframes Ryle's character.
It does.
Lily really believes that her baby could be in danger with him.
So actually, the things that you've been saying, it's actually really interesting. We have very similar brains, I suppose. We think quite similarly about these things, because I've actually got in my notes to discuss later, I've actually mentioned some of what you've just said, so I'm sure we'll get more in depth and get into the nitty-gritty of that a little bit later on. But first, a game.
A short break where we answer some questions about us and our favourite books.
Okay, so basically what we're doing, we've got a mug in front of us filled with little pieces of paper that are all folded up, and on the pieces of paper
are some bookish questions.
Bookish questions.
We thought you might want to know our opinions, our hot takes a little bit more. Who wants to go first? We can rock, paper, scissors if you want.
Yeah, let's rock, paper, scissors. Sophie won.
That's a little ASMR moment. A book you'd give to your worst enemy.
Do you know what? I'd give him a self-help book.
What would it be called? Oh, there's one I read recently that I feel like I would... It's like that dude wrote one that's like the subtle art of not giving a fuck. Here you go.
I feel like I would give a self-help book of like something to do with self-awareness.
Like passive-aggressive.
Yeah, I'd be passive-aggressive. I'd be like, here, I got you this book. It's about how you can be a better person.
I think I'd give them one of Jordan Peterson's
self-help
books. Jordan Peterson is a very intelligent man, but his writing is not for me. I tried to read one and it was about 30 pages talking about like some random animal. I think it was like squids or octopuses or something. Like, I'm going to give it to you so you feel indebted to get through the whole thing. And I promise you it's going to take you years. That's a big commitment.
I feel like I wouldn't want to give my worst enemy a proper book. If there's any way that they could enjoy it, I wouldn't want to risk it. Like, it'd have to be something that I knew is not fun to read. So like England, Your England would be perfect.
Frankenstein,
I like Frankenstein. I actually really enjoyed Frankenstein. What did you not like about Frankenstein?
Everything.
Everything.
Just everything. I did not like Victor. Victor peed me off. The creature peed me off. I can't remember the guy's name in the beginning, but his little like letters peed me off. The fact that
Watson.
Victor tried... I think so. The fact that Victor tried to marry his cousin, he married his cousin, peed me off. The fact he didn't realise that his cousin was gonna... peed me off. The fact he didn't bother making the
She-Hulk.
Creature.
She-Hulk.
Peed me off. I'm sorry, the whole thing made me go, It was just people complaining. It was just very many chapters of complaint. I hated it. It's because I studied it, I think. I didn't read it for pleasure.
Well, I studied it. I did too. But I feel like I wouldn't have enjoyed it if I'd have read it fully on my own. But I read it in high school. So like we would sit as a class and kind of read it together and get to annotate everything and go through all the meanings and stuff. And I feel like that annotating it alongside and then also annotating it as a group, so like hearing everybody's perspectives and opinions and stuff really opened it up for me. So I feel like that's probably why I enjoyed it the way that I did.
Still a no from me. I will say though, my opinions are subject to change. And I have reread Frankenstein recently because I chose to do a piece on it. It was not as horrific as my brain thinks it is. I think because I had to study it, like, I hate it. I do.
Valid. What character would you live a day in the life of? Or what character would you live a day in the life as?
Because my first instinct is like, I want to be not Harry Potter because he's got like problems going on, but like someone in Hogwarts. Like, I want to be Draco Malfoy for the day. I want to tell people I'm going to tell my father about this.
Hermione when she has the time turner.
Yeah, exactly. Like
I have a similar response. I'd want to be a character that has like magical powers.
Yeah, I think so.
I would be Nesta from Silver Flame, but like towards the end of the book Nesta, not like beginning of the book traumatized wacko Nesta.
See, I don't read a lot of books where like you would want to be the characters.
Yeah, no, you're like they're either dead or murderers.
Like, horror, autobiographies, like historical fiction.
Be the horror character. Like, say if you read like supernatural horror, you would be the ghost.
Yeah, exactly. I would have been the day in the life of like one of the killers. No, I don't read a lot of stuff where you would really want.
Actually, you know what? I would be Joe Goldberg.
I would be Joe Goldberg. Just a day in the life. Living in his bookstore.
Hell yeah.
Reading the book, sitting in the cage. And if I'm Joe, there's no Joe around to lock me in there. So immediately everything's better. That is who I will be for the day. That is who I want to be.
What is the most controversial book that you like or don't like?
I don't really like Colleen Hoover's books. And this is hilarious because we're talking about it. Not for any specific reason other than I'm not a big fan of romance, which is a big point for us because we're coming from completely different places when we're talking about these. And I'm not a big fantasy reader either, but it's just not really my thing. So like as a genre, romance in general. But like I said, I did read Verity and I had very mixed thoughts on that one, and I feel like it's a hot take although I don't think many people like Verity. You're like, I don't know, Colleen Hoover. I don't know.
See, I mean, it's not really relevant, but Ugly Love by Colleen Hoover. I did not enjoy that book. It felt really misogynistic to me, and like it just was weird. There's plot points in that book that are just odd. It romanticizes, you know, like there's this whole fetish of like step siblings having relations.
Yeah.
It's a very like big niche, and it really feels like Ugly Love kind of romanticizes that.
Yeah.
And kind of glorifies it in a way, and it's just, I don't want to touch on it too much because obviously we're not talking about that. This episode it ends with us, but Ugly Love it's an odd one. It is an odd one, and I struggled with it a lot because it really felt like the female lead was compromising herself for the sake of the male lead.
Yeah.
And he didn't really give a lot to her. There was not really any compromise on his side.
No, thank you.
How long does a book have to be for you to rage quit?
There is no
limit
to a book.
I would read a book that was longer than every version of the Bible.
The limit does not exist. Like if it was this thick, like this whole beautiful stack here.
Yeah, we have a big old stack of books.
4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Like 8 decently sized fantasy books with some hardbacks in there, just to give you a visual. Even if it was that big,
if it was good, if it was worth it.
Even if it was like 2,000, 3,000 pages, if I was interested in it, nothing would stop me.
If it was written well.
Nothing would stop me.
No, me either, I agree.
I would hibernate.
There is no limit, it just has to be a good book.
There is no limit, I just have to care about it. If it's bad, no. Yeah, the limit does not exist, baby. Absolutely. Which horror character would you most like to have dinner with?
This one's hard for me because I've not read a lot of horrors. I would go to dinner. I know I already brought up it, but I would go to dinner with Pennywise.
I was thinking that.
I would go with Pennywise.
He would be so fun. Like, if the rule was, it really depends.
If the rule was he's not allowed to kill you.
He can't, like, torture me either. Like, none of this hallucination stuff. Just, like, me and him.
He has to be nice.
Doing, like, the dance.
Holding balloons. Creepy grinning at each other.
I'd be like, show me your teeth. You know who I would go with? Like, Hunger Games Snow. I would say...
Young version, or you do?
Dinner.
Dinner. Okay.
Dinner. I'm not doing anything.
Do you know who I do?
Nefarious. No, I would go have dinner with Snow, young or old. Maybe old.
He's got more experience.
He seems like he'd be a riot, and I have questions for that man. And like, if we're sat down and he can't leave and he can't get me killed, I have questions.
Yes.
And I would like to present them. I would do that, but it's not horror. But I would still do that.
Yeah.
He's horrific. It counts. Who's your favourite strong female character?
Oh, so many. I have so many. The ones that come to mind, in case you couldn't tell, I love Sarah J. Maas. I enjoy Feyre, Nesta. I like Aelin, Lysandra. They're so... her female characters, she writes her female characters as boss bitches. Even the villains, so Maeve, she's still a powerful lady. She gets what she wants. She knows what she wants and she gets it. Like, she is... the powerful women are doing something for me.
I personally like Katniss Everdeen very much.
That's a good one too, actually.
Very, very much. Big fat... because she's so flawed. Like, she's not a boss bitch. She is a very... flawed bitch doing the best she can.
Yeah.
And I really like that. I really like the Hunger Games. I think it's a masterclass on dystopia.
Okay, this is time for reviews. So, back to It Ends With Us. We'll start with critic reviews. I did a little bit of researching. I've had a look at some articles of reviews of It Ends With Us, and this is some of what people have said. So, Prapti Uprati from the Washburn Review says, It Ends With Us is a story of love, heartbreak, and finding strength. They also say, it challenges what society expects and shows the real struggle victims of abuse go through. John Preston from The Medium says, it made me very emotional and brought me to tears. He also said, the last few chapters, though, went on a bit too long. However, he then goes back on himself and says that it was packed with the book overall was packed with emotional punch, and that it was a more nuanced look into the cycle of abuse.
I agree. It was quite nuanced.
Nikhil Shahar Parah, I'm sorry for butchering the names, from the Daily Reader said that the book was somewhat lukewarm. It was a volatile concoction of steamy romance and domestic abuse, and that the sheer predictability of its plot and character dynamics left her yearning for more depth.
I can see that.
So, from critic reviews, the overarching viewpoint, opinion of it is that it's a good book in the sense of the plot.
It's just missing.
The plot is good, but it's just missing something. So it's like they like the idea of the book, and the ideas that went into it are good and very emotional, very impactful, but the writing itself kind of pulls it down a little bit. Moving on to public reviews, we went through TikTok, and these are some comments that people have posted underneath videos to do with Colleen Hoover's It Ends With Us. One person said, "Colleen did so good. She made us fall in love with Lily and showed us how hard the cycle is." Another person said, "This book messed me up so bad." On Reddit, a person said, "I don't think there's a book that I hate more than this one. It's supposed to be a statement on abuse, but I think it's a poorly made one." And someone else said, "I love the message of the book, but definitely was not satisfied with how it played out." Another person said, "I love this book because it's so emotional and relatable." Finally, on Goodreads, the book has 4.5 stars. This person gave the book 5 stars and says, "Lily's story has a lot to teach." Another person who also gave it 5 stars said, "It feels like my heart has been filled, then broken, then filled again, then broken. In the end, I'm stunned by what I read."
Ooh, question. Did you cry when you read this?
No.
Okay, because it sounds like some of these people cried.
Yeah.
It's been like, it broke me.
So
like, did you feel that emotionally about it?
No. Like, there was emotion. I did feel things about it, and it was impactful, but it just didn't bring that much emotion.
Yeah, okay.
For me. So, overall, public review is also quite positive. People found it very emotional and very impactful. But again, there's kind of a theme here of people finding the writing being where the book lacks. That the idea of it and the plot and why she wrote it are all amazing, but possibly the way she wrote it and how she produced the story is not on par with the ideas. What do you agree with out of that? Like, if you were gonna give a review based off of what you've heard today, what would you say?
I would say that I agree with, because I obviously said before, I think it's a good message, it's a good discussion. I really like the circular nature of like the title being "It Ends With Us," and then, you know, the character saying at the end, like, it does end with us, as in the cycle. I think depth wise, I can really see that as well though, like being a criticism, because from what I've heard, like, you know, we get a little bit of this man's like traumatic backstory, but I don't think it really explains a lot of his behaviors, and I don't think it's a deep enough reason. Like, I don't think that's explored as heavily as it could be.
Yeah.
I think that's the depth it's missing a little bit, maybe. Like, I could see that.
Yeah.
I could see that being.
I think I would probably I'd probably give a similar review myself of the ideas and story, love. However, there are certain parts in the writing and like the way that it was written that just kind of fall a bit short. Okay, so a discussion of our opinions of It Ends With Us. I'd like to start by saying, or asking, I suppose, who is your favourite character?
I am really intrigued by Atlas. I don't think he's explored. Maybe he's explored a little bit more, but like I really like that character so far, I think.
My favourite character is Alyssa, Ryle's sister, and specifically Alyssa is my favourite because of how she responded to the situation. So obviously I mentioned she is there for Lily through it all, really. Basically when Lily comes to her with issues, so the first time Lily goes to her, it's not framed as your brother's abusing me, it's just kind of letting her know, kind of venting a little bit, and Alyssa is immediately there for her. She immediately backs her up and speaks to Ryle about it and calls attention to it, calls it out, really. And then moving on to when Ryle and Lily have split up, Alyssa continues to be there for Lily. She still has a relationship with Ryle because that's her brother, but she openly supports Lily. She openly is like, Ryle, you need to stay away from her. You were in the wrong here. You know that you were wrong for this. And she supports Lily, and ultimately she discourages Lily from getting back with Ryle. Like, she is very, very, very supportive. And I like that because Ryle is her family. It's her brother, but it's kind of showing that her morals and her core beliefs, it shows her as a really good person. And it's really easy to get caught up in the main characters and discussing them and choosing one of them as your favourite and all that sort of stuff. But I really enjoyed the way Alyssa was written. Just the way that she handled the situation I thought was really beautiful. Like that sort of friendship is a beautiful kind of friendship where even when someone she really cared about and loved was the one in the wrong, she was still able to say, no, you're my friend and I support you. This is wrong. And I don't know, I appreciated that part of it.
I like that.
So my overall feelings towards the book were that I liked it. It only took me a couple of days to read. Like, it was quite a quick read for me. It was easy to digest. And I really liked the complexity of the character networks, like how Lily kind of got entangled in Ryle and his family, especially because the flat that she moved, the apartment that her and Ryle live in, is in the same building as his sister and her husband. And I kind of like the way the characters, like their actual social connections, because it really shows an aspect of why it could be so difficult to leave an abusive environment, is because you are connected to all of these people that are connected to your abuser, and the fear of losing all of that.
Yeah, it's realistic in that way.
That is like, that's a realistic fear to have, and like that is something that can happen and that does happen. So again, that's another reason why I liked Alyssa, is the fear of losing everyone is a reason why maybe Lily stayed for as long as she did. But the fact that Alyssa, as soon as she knew, was on Lily's side, I think that was nice. I also really enjoyed, so when I was reading the book, and this is also like a common comment that people have made, you don't realise that the book is about domestic violence until the second instance. So even the first time when he burns the casserole and he pushes her, you're like, oh, what the heck? But you don't quite cop on that this book is centred around the domestic violence. You don't realise that that is what the book is going to kind of conclude with. So you get halfway through, maybe not halfway through, but you get through a good chunk of it thinking, oh, this is going to be a really good romance, thinking this is a really good romance. Like, this is so complex. There's a love triangle. There's all this going on. It's all great, blah, 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 blah. And then all of a sudden it hits you. It dawns. Oh my gosh, this is about domestic violence. And I really like how that kind of I don't know if it was intentional, but for me, it really symbolises domestic violence itself. Like, when you are in a relationship with someone where it is turning into a domestic violence situation, more often than not, you don't start that relationship and they immediately start being really violent towards you and doing all of these atrocious things. It does, more often than not, it does start small. And build to bigger things. And it is often a very slow process of little things, getting away with little things, and then slowly building more, pushing more boundaries of what else can I do to you before you say enough, or like getting you used to this behaviour slowly so that I can start doing worse things, and you're going to think it's normal because you're already used to the rest of it. And I think that mirrored in the way that it was written, and I thought that was a really impactful part of it.
I agree.
What are your overall feelings?
I already covered this a little bit, but like, I feel like it diverted my expectations, because obviously some of the conversations surrounding this book are not maybe the most accurate reflection of the content and the intentions of the author. And I think, calling back attention, I think it's really important that she was a social worker. I think it's really important context that, you know, this is something that she's witnessed firsthand through a job, but also through her own personal experiences. And I think from the way that you're speaking about it, it was definitely written with love, and it was written with an intention. And I think hearing the way you speak about it, that's shining through to me. Like, you've made that clear to me. So I'm kind of just hoping that the book is doing everything you're saying that it is. Because, I mean, obviously every book has its bits that are boring, has its bits that are not as well rounded as they should be, unless it's The Hunger Games, which is a masterpiece. Fight me. But like, everything, there's definitely bits to be improved on and depth to be had. But if it's doing everything that you are telling me, I think that it is a really wonderful conversation starter, and something that people maybe should
It's read. A good conversation to be having. As a society, it is a good conversation to be having.
Yeah, and it's a good thing, maybe not to be made into a movie, commercialised.
Which it was, and it was absolutely butchered.
Did you see the movie?
I did see the movie. It was butchered.
It was not good.
No.
And then there's the whole controversy.
The whole controversy around the actors and the directing and stuff like that after the movie came out really took away from
the point. I think so too. That's what I mean. I think the content of this book has been diluted and mixed in with a bunch of really negative conversations.
Yeah, definitely.
Which is what I had heard, which is what I was coming into it thinking about?
The writing style, which is something that you've just briefly touched on. It was written in first person, and it felt like when I was reading it that it was like reading someone's inner monologue, and I did enjoy that because it really felt like we were seeing into Lily's mind. However, I will say that there were parts that like the tone just felt kind of off, like it had kind of shifted. And the best way that I can describe it is that as you're reading it, there's a certain way that it was written and like the kind of tone of the writing in general, and then every now and again it would shift slightly for a paragraph or two, and it really feels like it takes you out of the story a little bit, and all you can really think is it really feels as though Colleen Hoover, whilst writing this part, did not care about it or was not engaged with her writing as she wrote this section.
Was it one of her first ones she published, or?
I think it was one of the earlier ones.
Which it kind of makes sense, I suppose. Would you say, if you've read any of the ones that have come out after, does it like get better, or do you think that's quite
No, I think that is something that she does quite consistently, is like when she's less engaged with writing. I don't know, it could be personal stuff going on that she was just not focused on the writing itself, or if she just genuinely was not as interested in that part of the book while she was writing it. But it is a common thing for her, at least for me when I'm reading it, that it kind of sticks out for me and pulls me away from the story where I'm just going in my head, this sounds like it was written by someone else.
So you're saying it doesn't feel like she's treated certain bits with like
as much
the same
care.
amount of enthusiasm as well.
Yeah, there's definitely sections where it feels like the enthusiasm from the writer was just not there.
It's interesting that you say that sticks around in her other releases, because obviously after this one got so popular, she's probably got a whole team and there's a lot of editors and there's a lot of things that goes through. So it's just interesting, something to note, that like you still feel that even in her later works.
Yeah.
Even though there's so many people.
I will say I'm really finicky with stuff like that. I'm very fussy about that sort of thing. I don't know if it's just me as like the person that I am and how I read a book, but it is really noticeable for me when the tone of the writing shifts.
I mean, from my very limited experience with Colleen Hoover, which is Verity, which is not necessarily the same type of book as these books, but I will say like there's certain sections I was very in and out of it as I was reading it, so I can see what you're saying, like that makes sense to me. I didn't polish it off too quickly because I was in and out of enjoying it.
Yeah. The parts that you enjoy the most as the reader are the parts that it seems she enjoyed writing the most.
Yeah, I can see that.
So I'd also like to talk about, obviously her dad was abusive towards her mum. Lily's dad was abusive towards her mum. And there's this whole thing throughout the whole book about her resentment towards him. There's the eulogy that she refused to give, just standing there in silence for 2 minutes. And she talks a lot about her feelings towards him and all that sort of stuff. But by the end of the book, she's forgiven him, and it's expressed that she's, so by the like end of, like it's at towards the end of the book, she kind of, in her thought process, she forgives him for it and kind of lets it go, which, I mean, I'm all for letting things go that are hurting you, but I feel like her forgiving him kind of glorifies or like romanticizes having relationships with toxic parents. So obviously he's already passed, she's not going to have a relationship with him moving forwards, but I will say that it felt unnecessary to have that. Like I don't see what the problem would be with her continuing to not like him.
On one hand, like, it shows personal growth to a certain extent.
Personal growth, yeah.
But then on the other, I see what you mean. It's like purporting an idea that in order to grow as a human being,
you have to forgive.
You have to forgive and forget and like let bygones.
But that's not true.
Be bygones.
You can be a happy person. You can be happy and healthy and have an amazing life.
Yeah.
And it still be valid not to forgive someone, especially someone that has caused so much trauma.
I feel like that's a bit of a mixed up message, because obviously she's growing and she's learning from what happened with her father to not be like her mother and draw a boundary. But then at the same time, she's forgiving her father, which is making it sort of implying that within time she might
forgive Ryle. Exactly. So my next point on this was literally that. One of the key themes about this whole book is ending cycles. It ends with us. The cycle ends with us. That is the whole point of the book. And yet she goes into a bit, like, she kind of goes into depth a little bit about how her mum forgives her dad and lets him back in over and over and over again. And that it's not just him abusing the mum that is the cycle. cycle. It's also the mum forgiving and letting it go and making excuses and all that sort of stuff, like that cycle of things. And yet she continues that cycle by forgiving him.
Yeah. I think that's really mixed messaging.
Yes.
It's really mixed. I'm not a fan of that.
I didn't love that. It felt like it was unnecessary to have as well. Like, if there was more of a focus on her feelings for her dad, if that was a bigger part of it, and that was more explored, and if we went into depth about how her resenting him was a really major issue for her, and it was preventing her from having a healthy life and from growing, that's not what the book was about.
Yeah.
So it felt unnecessary to have that. It felt like she could have remained on.
She could have remained upset.
She could have
remained bothered.
Not even upset. You don't have to be upset or like majorly affected by something to not forgive it.
Yeah.
You can be like, I don't care about this anymore. I don't want to think about it. It doesn't affect me, but that doesn't mean I forgive you for it.
I've seen a lot of that though, like the idea that to mature you have to forgive, and being mature and forgiving are like intertwined in some way.
No, that's just not true.
There are some things that you can't.
It's fully valid to not forgive.
And I think it is a mixed message, especially in the context of this book, where she's not forgiving one act of abuse and forgiving a different act.
It's hypocritical.
Like, yeah, that's mixed.
Okay, so when I first read this book and I got to the abuse scenes, when I first read it, I had the opinion that I felt like it could have been more dramatized, more theatrical, more dynamic. Like, I found myself thinking, oh, well, he's only pushed her.
Were they quick scenes as well? Like, how much space in the book did that?
I'd say each one, so the first one, the time that it took for him to have pushed her and for her to hit her head was a matter of 2 pages. The next one was pushing her down the stairs, and again, that whole thing was a few pages. And then the big one was, again, a few pages.
And these are significant.
And they're like significant parts of the book, and obviously it gets worse. So the first instance compared to the last, it builds quite dramatically, going from a push to attempted rape. That is like a big jump.
Yeah.
And so what I'm trying to say is, I found myself thinking or wanting the abuse to have been more dramatized, but actually having finished the book and having time to think on it, it's the same as what I was saying earlier, in the sense of it mirrors reality. Like, it's more realistic and it's easier to think of it as putting it into perspective of reality and how people would be in those situations. I think it is obviously the whole point of the book is trying to talk about real life abuse. So I kind of changed my opinion on that, and I actually appreciate now the fact that it started slow and that it wasn't this big massive explosion every time, and that kind of waited until the last incident, especially because the last incident was the biggest, and that's the one that made her go, yeah, absolutely not. So I feel like, actually, in context to the book and how Lily felt about things, if it had been more explosive,
you wouldn't have got to that.
Then she wouldn't have got to that point in the first place. And I feel as though that is the point. Like,
because it's small.
Most people are not gonna start a relationship with someone and have them punch them in the face or something like that, and then stay. Like,
give it
if that happened right at the beginning of a relationship, you would immediately go, no, that's not how you treat people.
Build, like, the emotional investment.
Yeah, you have to. It's like the manipulation of it.
Yeah, I see. I think it's really insightful that you know that. I mean, I find myself with books sometimes too, like, when you're reading it, sometimes it feels like you need more from it, but then it takes a step back to be like, there's actually a lot of nuance in this. There's a lot of realism in this, and it serves the message better to be the way it is. Yeah. Even if it wasn't like what I wanted to see in the moment from these characters. So like, I think that's an interesting hot take, and I do think you're right. It is rooted in realism. From what you said anyway, it seems like quite a realistic, like, slow burn, sort of slow gradual climb to a kind of really terrible place. But if you'd have started there, if you'd have started there, the book would have been 2 pages. Like, the incident would have happened, and she'd have got no.
Yeah, exactly. I also want to comment on the fact that when it comes to like this, the type of abuse, obviously there was physical stuff in there, but I wanted to just comment briefly on the psychological side of things and the psychological impact of it, because obviously outside of him being abusive, outside of those incidences, he's really, really sweet and he's lovely, and when something has happened, he's so apologetic and he feels so guilty and he feels so bad, and then that makes Lily feel bad for not being okay with it and for calling it out.
Yeah.
But then he goes absolutely nuts and starts doing absolutely crazy, inappropriate, what's the word I'm looking for when something's just bang out of order? That'd be fine.
Freaking flabbergasting.
Absolutely bonkers shit that you should not do to a person. And like the psychological impact of that is like Lily doesn't know which Ryle is the real Ryle.
I mean,
and she has to kind of argue with herself, and kind of she has to figure out, he's apologizing, he's so upset, he feels so guilty. She then has to figure out whether she believes that it's gonna happen again or not. Like the psychological impact of that, of her having to kind of make a compromise between these two different Ryles and trying to figure out which one she's gonna have at which point, not knowing if you're gonna have the kind Ryle or the angry Ryle, not knowing how he's gonna respond in these situations, and like how that then impacts her psyche and how she has to go about life having to worry about all of this stuff, and the feelings that it would give her, like the feeling guilt for him, feeling guilt because of the way that he responds. And that's not to say that him apologizing and feeling guilty is him intentionally trying to manipulate her. I think it's made very clear that he does feel bad. It's not like he has anger issues, and like that he has episodes essentially, that when he's himself and he's calm, he is not okay with that behavior. Like he would never be okay with that behavior and doesn't want to act like that. Like he isn't okay with it at all. Obviously that doesn't make it okay in the slightest, but I feel like that just makes it even harder, because knowing he's not trying to manipulate you, but he is still manipulating you,
I think
it's difficult.
A really lovely way of putting that, because you see it a lot. I mean, I don't know about you, but I have had, conversations regarding this sort of thing with people, and like I think especially for people in this type of situation, you sort of have two lanes in your head, and I think he does a really good job of demonstrating that. But like on one hand, this is someone I love, and you sort of, and then on the other hand, this is someone I hate, and you split it up into two different people, and you don't want to lose one half on the sake of the other, so on and so forth. And like I think that's a very real mental battle that people have, and I think
it's really hard to also come to a place where you can kind of,
it's a loss as well.
Yeah, and like you can kind of see in Lily's perspective throughout the book that she is in these two lanes where she's got angry Ryle and kind Ryle, we'll call them, and she thinks of it as two separate people, and it takes her to the end of the book to actually kind of come to terms with the fact that it is just one Ryle, and that these two versions of him are one version. It's one person.
Yeah, I think this is such an important conversation to have.
It really is.
This is like quite nuanced, actually. Like some of like the reviews saying it lacks a little bit of depth, but like there is depth
in the context,
the whole scheme of it.
There might not be depth in the sense of like her writing might miss certain things, but like
there's depth.
The depth in the context of the plot, that is there. That is not lacking.
And writers can't do it all. They can't give depth to, every character, every situation. And I think maybe for this, she's just zoomed in on like Lily, and it's Lily's experience.
Yeah.
And she's probably done a really good job of showing Lily at the very least.
Yeah, the internal battle, the struggle, which is the whole point. Like it's showing, one, ending cycles, but two, it's the struggle of like the victim's mindset. And like people say, you'll often find people saying, oh, why didn't she just leave him? And this book really shows you, it goes into some of the reasons why that might be.
Yeah, I think so.
So going into some of the techniques that we used, obviously the opening scene is the rooftop, and there's a lot of foreshadowing in that scene for the rest of the book. So obviously Ryle coming in and immediately beating up a chair, kicking the crap out of it.
I thought that when you said it.
That is obviously foreshadowing for him
beating the
crap out of her. Like that is some very very blatant foreshadowing of he's an angry man. He has anger issues. He has anger issues. He's gonna like you know.
As you were narrating it to me, I did sort of feel like, as you said things, I was like, oh, I know what happens next. Oh, I know what happens next. Yeah. No, I don't want that to happen. Like the thing with the biting, the collarbone situation. As soon as you said she had the tattoo, I was like, no. Like you can really, it's got a progression you can guess, but more because it's realistic and less because it's predictable.
Yeah. I'd also like to say the symbolism of actually what you were just talking about, the tattoo on the collarbone. The symbolism after Ryle bit her there, I would say, so it leaves scars, little little white marks that she has around the heart, and I feel like that is symbolism for the way that these toxic relationships and abuse and domestic violence, even when you're out of that situation, it leaves a scar. Like, Lily will have always been through this. She is always going to have to deal with the fact that she has been through this situation, and the scars on her collarbone. We could also, you could go into like the fact, like the heart being involved in that as well.
Say, like in reverse, obviously, the fact that she had that tattoo is a very nice symbolism for the fact that her and Atlas will always share a bond. Like, she's always going to remember that. There's always that love. That heart is physically there, even if he's not.
The permanence of experience, the symbolism for permanence of experience.
I like that. Yeah, the permanence of experience. Like, it's a very physical way of showing, like with the bite and the bite marks, with the heart tattoo. Like, once you love someone, you will always have that. You will carry that with you, even if you don't feel it anymore.
Yeah.
And like that trauma that she has with Ryle, she will always have that with her. She will always feel that to a certain extent, even if it's not actively happening anymore. I think it's wonderful, actually. It's a really visual way of giving it to the reader as well.
My last point that I want to touch on is the moment in the book where we touched on briefly earlier, where Lily basically says to Ryle, you can't have overnights with Emerson or Emmy.
Absolutely.
I love that. I found that so powerful and so impactful, because at that point, the way that Ryle is written, you get to a point where you still have like some form of sympathy for him. And for me, at least, I wasn't rooting for Ryle. I don't want them to stay together, but I was rooting for Ryle in the sense of you want him to get better. Like, you want him to be a better person, all this sort of stuff. And it's easy to see the good sides of Ryle, but her saying that, I found very, like, that hit hard, because it really makes you think. It shows Lily's distrust for Ryle, even though she's trying to move on and be civil with him. It shows her distrust, but also it gives you distrust. Like, as the reader, it kind of brings you back to the, oh, actually, you feel like you're the one who's been manipulated by Ryle, because you've read that he's done all of these things to Lily. You know that he's done this. You know what he's capable of, and yet up at that point, before this is said, you're kind of thinking, I suppose, with empathy for him. And she says you don't get overnights until she can talk, so that she can tell me if something happens, and you're like, snaps you back into reality, and you're like, oh my gosh, why am I feeling sorry for this person? Why do I feel such empathy for him, when she's right? Like,
dangerous person.
He's dangerous. Yeah, exactly. You've kind of been lured into this sense of security with him, even though you know he's not a safe person. And again, I think that that's really great. I think that mirrors reality. It's again talking about how people may feel in that sort of a relationship. It kind of mirrors those feelings that people might have.
I think it's a good moral as well. Like, that was really Lily. I mean, you hear about it, like people not being very good at standing up for themselves, but as soon as there's a child involved, the line and the stuff, with it being like a daughter as well. Yeah. Like, I think that's quite symbolic. A little bit on the nose, because it's a bit of a cliche, because you hear about that a lot, but I think it was a really nice statement to make. And I think it's smart. Yeah. That's something I've never been in that situation, but nothing I ever really thought of anyone saying before. Like, you don't get overnights with your child because you are a dangerous person, and she needs to be able to tell me. Yeah. There's so much nuance to that statement. Yeah. Like, the being able to tell me bit is like...
That's so important.
And I think it...
Because people might not even think about that. Like, that's not even something that comes into mind. And that is actually a really important point, is he could do anything and you wouldn't know until she can speak.
I think it adds danger to his character. The fact that Lily actually thinks that he might hurt his child, because it's one thing. There's a lot more aspects to people. Like, I think domestic violence towards a partner is kind of in a different category to domestic violence towards children. Not to say they're not similarly awful or anything of the such, but her saying that she thinks that he's capable of being violent towards a newborn or a baby is a whole nother level. Yeah, is bringing up that a whole nother level. Like, not only are you a danger to someone in a romantic relationship, you actually might hurt a child, which gives it something completely different. That's a very morbid end sort of situation for her to say, like, I truly believe that you might hurt my child.
I think that's really impactful. Okay, that brings us to the end of this episode
of Off the Page.
Just to summarise, It Ends With Us is a book that centres around domestic violence and ending the cycle. It is a book that tries to show the realities of what being in a toxic relationship where domestic violence is present could really look like, and tries to bring that conversation forwards. You've been listening to Off the Page. I'm Daisy.
And I'm Sophie.
That's it for now. Please like and subscribe and follow our socials. They'll be linked in the bio.